Alrighty then, so we're moving right along here, and we covered a few grounds, covered some ground on the last two-hour video, and we covered the grounds of one ground we covered was encouraging the body of Christ to continue to be the light, and times like this is where your light that's been shining so beautiful and bright, and your salt that's been seasoning and salting the earth is going to be even more enhanced, and it's going to shine even brighter, and it's going to salt even more so now in times like these. And we also discussed not allowing the gospel. Christ will not allow the gospel to be contained and locked away, because someone said stay home, and you by order you have to stay home. And our businesses, some of them can be still ran, but your business of preaching the gospel must be contained, And so the world comes full circle back around from when Peter and them were being told to don't preach the gospel. And by fact, they were being admonished for being having church and being the church at home from house to house, and got arrested for doing it, and got arrested for coming down to the temple, to the places that believed that were still under the law, and preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ to them. They got in trouble and stoned. They faced peril. Paul said he was shipwrecked so many times, and so many different things happened to him. But he, through it all, he continued to press on and fight the good fight of faith, and continue to contend for the truth and for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, up until the point, all through all the suffering, being stoned, being imprisoned, prepare your hearts, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, for the shortened form of the tribulation, which Jesus said he will shorten the tribulation, the great tribulation, for the elect's sake, which means we will be here for the short part of the tribulation, but for the major part of it, we'll be gone. And so, prepare your heart, and when we begin to suffer accusations and false imprisonments, and for being out there to go preach the gospel, or being out there to go buy a loaf of bread or whatever, we refuse to be told to stay home or whatever, and as we're preaching the gospel to that cop that pulled you over or pulled me over, you may find yourself in handcuffs, but consider it a good thing and not the devil is a lie, that won't happen to me. Consider that biblically suffering for Christ reaches those type of stages, okay, and that it is the order of God, and consider also that Christ has people within these organizations also, and that will go like this: go get your bread, go like this, go get, they got people within. Paul had people within the prison system that we discussed, that it got to a point where they were within rank that were letting him leave prison and go and preach the gospel in certain places, and until the devil changed, the guards, did the changing of the guards, and put Nero in charge. And now once Satan put Nero in the throne, then Nero shuts Paul down altogether, and then he finally beheads him. But by that time, he's ran his race, he's fought the good fight of faith, and he's done the will of God. So, and gotten preached the gospel, which got many people born again and saved. So, in these days, we were discussing. We're going to start this video over here. We're just discussing that the world's leading globalists, many of them have gotten together from each. This was building up from each pandemic. From the Zika to the Ebola to the swine was building up. They were putting the disease out there to give themselves an excuse why the way you deal with pandemics and the way you deal with the people during times of pandemic should be in existence. In other words, we're giving ourselves, by putting the disease out there, making people afraid of it, and this and that. Now it sets the stage for us to be able to say, this is why we need this. This is why we need to start doing this. And this is why we need to start doing this. And this is why we need this type of this type of what do you call it again? It's the word's trying to leave my mind. This type of cure, this type of antivirus. You know, this is why we need this type of vaccine. This is why we need this type of thing. This is why we need to get implemented. And because these things, and like in this video, they're going to be saying what, because the next big thing is going to be worse, and it could be worse and spread this far and get this big. So we're going to need to do this in order to take care of that. We need governments to work together with the heads of major organizations, Walmarts and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. So these guys in these videos, they're not prophesizing, they're planning. It's a pre-plan. And when you hear them say, now this is a month before the coronavirus gets infects the very first person in China. Okay, a month before, and they're already saying that we need a plan, and we're gonna because the next one is going to be and can also end up being this and go to this level if we don't prepare and do this to solve it, to get it, you know, to get it all worked out or whatever. So I'm gonna start this video and I'll let you hear this lady. Remember what the title of it, what they titled it: Event 201 Pandemic Exercise. This was released, it was put together over a series of months, but it and what's the name, Bill Gates was the billionaire force behind it, and his wife Melinda, and the John Hutchins or Huggins or whatever Foundation, I think that's called, right? John Hughes, is it? It says a global pandemic exercise. Okay, they're gonna mention the guy's name. I think they're gonna mention his name, John something, John Hughes, and Bill Gates organization put it together in October. I mean before October, and they released it October 18th. And then this month, Bill Gates steps down as the CEO of his major company. Him and the other billionaire, Warren Buffett, but he steps down as from their company as CEO, the Microsoft company. And so he was the 38th major CEO of a company, a major company that stepped down. He stepped down from microwave. There's one that stepped down from many people have stepped down. You got we went over that yesterday on a video yesterday, where we were on a link where they showed like these stores are trying to leave my head, but major contributors, major places, CEOs have stepped down from their CEO position, and all throughout the year 2019. But the majority of them stepped down to the end of the year. Okay, just one right after the other. Boom, 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 boom. The last one stepped down in 2020. Bill Gates stepped down from being the CEO of the Microsoft company. So this is called Satan just changing the positions, changing up the guards for a specific reason, specific hidden reason. Okay, so I think Amazon was one of the companies. I think CVS is one of the companies, plausibly. The company that governs the electricity in California, the CEO there of that stepped down, and many others have stepped down, and we'll get back to that later. But in October, this is when they released this video. Okay, and this is right here, 50 minutes. I'll just do this video. But this is unless it highlight. We did this one yesterday, right? It's a 12-minute. This is a 50-minute video. This is the video right here. This is just segment number 1. So I'm just do segment number 1, and I'm not even sure how long these are. Like segment 2. Segment 2 is 30 minutes. Segment 3 is 37 minutes. Segment 4 is 36 minutes. Segment 5 is 41 minutes. And John, that's his name, John Hopkins. Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, Center for Health Security, World Economic Forum, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Okay, so they're the ones behind all of this right here. Okay, so this one's 34 minutes, and this one right here is 56 minutes. So let me start this. Now keep in mind, this is just according to them, this is just an exercise. Okay, it says segment 1, introduction and medical countermeasure discussion. The title again, Event 201, Pandemic Exercise, segment 1, introduction.
Hello everyone, I'm Anita Cicero, Deputy Director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, and today I will be your Master of Ceremonies for Event 201. On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our audience here in New York, as well as our larger virtual audience participating online today. The goal of the Event 201 exercise is to illustrate the potential consequences of a pandemic and the kinds of societal and economic challenges it would pose. The scenario also highlights the very critical role.
So what we're going through right now, according to her, is one big scientific experiment, okay?
That global business and public-private partnerships play in preparing for and responding to pandemics. Today's scenario is going to simulate meetings of a multi-stakeholder group called the Pandemic Emergency Board. This board has been urgently convened by the World Economic Forum, and Johns Hopkins has been asked to moderate the board meetings and provide expertise during the board's deliberations. The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic.
So, keep in mind again, this is October that they released this. And this is before the pandemic starts. It's a real pandemic, but it's one that they created. This is before the pandemic starts. This is before the November 17th is when, somewhere around there, around November 17th is where the first person had gotten the pandemic or the disease called coronavirus. Okay, and so this again was a month prior to, and she's talking about, like, we're preparing, just in case measures, we're preparing just in case. In other words, just in case it happens. Okay.
The board is comprised of highly experienced.
They know that it's already been released, and it's going to take some time. It's going to take about a month or two for somebody to get it, for it to start spreading. So they already know it's been released. That's why they're doing this exercise, as they call it. Well, taking measures, and again, taking measures for something that they already know, that they released out there by the time they even started saying that it was caused by a bat. Okay.
Experienced leaders from business, public health, operations. The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society. The board's recommendations are aimed at top decision makers in national governments, global business, and international organizations. In this scenario, Tom Inglesby, the director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, will be chairing the board and serving as the moderator for its discussions. Today's exercise will simulate 4 meetings of the Pandemic Emergency Board, and each meeting will be devoted to one key topic. Each meeting will start with a video and a briefing that will provide the information needed for the board members to engage. Please note, this is not a test of any particular person, organization, or nation. The participants are all playing as themselves. That is, senior business executives, NGO leaders, and government officials. They're not expected to be pandemic experts. We've really asked them to participate based on their own expertise and their best professional judgment. With the exception of Tom Minglesby, none of the participants know any of the details about how the exercise will unfold. The Event 201 scenario is fictional, but
It's fictional. The scenario is fictional. So everything you're about to see them sitting at the table and discussing how they will deal with the pandemic is fictional.
It's based on public health principles, epidemiologic modeling, and assessment of past outbreaks.
Assessment of past outbreaks, but yet there's an urgent need because something is about to happen. Something is. This is October. This is before the coronavirus that we're dealing with now even got started. So she's saying it's about past outbreaks, but yet when those past outbreaks happened, they had the same thing going on with these things, where they had Bill Gates giving conferences and stuff about the outbreaks, and that day when those outbreaks happened, the Ebola, they had Bill Gates talking about it and giving conferences about that in the moment that it was existing. Here, those were all build-ups to this, and so here we got 1 month before the outbreak, and she's saying that this is just it's fictional, It deals with the outbreaks of the past, but yet is for the pre-planning of just in case we get one that's harder to contain. Now, I'm not making those words up. You're going to hear them, not verbatim, but you're going to hear it.
None of the participants know any of the details about how the exercise will unfold. The Event 201 scenario is fictional, but it's based on public health principles, epidemiologic modeling, and assessment of past outbreaks. In other words, we've created a pandemic that could realistically occur.
We created a pandemic that could, in other words, metaphoric pandemic or a hypothetical pandemic that could occur. That could occur. And one month later, it literally occurred. Literally. Okay, so where are we up at? 2 minutes here?
The Event 201 scenario is fictional, but it's based on public health principles, epidemiologic modeling, and assessment of past outbreaks. In other words, we've created a pandemic that could realistically occur. And for those interested in our assumptions, we will have a lot of the background research of the scenario publicly available on
assumptions, which leads to 1 month later, reality.
On our Event 201 website at the conclusion of the exercise. The policy discussion.
Look at her face. That face has a story to tell. She knows there's a virus already out there. She knows that they already put it out there or they were planning to do it a month later. But she knows already. Look at her face. The face doesn't lie, the eyes don't lie. She's saying it's an exercise and fictional, but look at her face. This is a warning. She's putting a warning out there, but they're putting it out there in the form of, it's like Satan standing in plain sight, saying, I'm about to do this thing, but I get to hide in plain sight right in front of you. It's just an exercise. It's fictional. It's assuming something major happens.
The challenges to be discussed in this exercise represent controversial, high-stakes issues that would require high-level input from business and government leaders. So just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. For our in-person audience, please do silence all your electronic devices, but you may tweet at #Event201. We're going to have
They even invited people out to sit in their studio audience to watch them put on a show about a pandemic that could, spread throughout the world. Of course, all what we're seeing right now. They got an audience, and they got a virtual audience because he said it was when they did this, it was actually online for free to watch.
Have a 15-minute break in the middle of the exercise, so please try to confine your calls and work to that time. Because the event is being video recorded and live streamed, we ask that you remain quiet as much as possible and avoid moving around during the exercise. The exercise is going to end at 12:30, and there'll be a luncheon in the cotillion room, to which you are all invited. As you
happy
know,
day,
there's also
lunch.
an online virtual event
In the middle-
201 exercise
in the middle
that's
of
happening
plant chaos.
simultaneously. And for those of you online, and I understand there are hundreds of you, you will be seeing the same news videos and briefings as we do here in New York. But you will engage in your own online discussion in place of watching the discussions of the players here in the room. The topics and the topics and the pacing of the deliberations will be the same, both online and in the room. So, as you can see on this slide, we have an outstanding group of global leaders playing the role of the Pandemic Emergency Board members here in New York. And with that, let's welcome our participants and invite them into the room. Tom Inglesby from Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, LaToya Abbott, Marriott International,
Marriott,
Sophia Borges, UN Foundation,
United Nations,
Brad
Foundation.
Honnett, Henry Schein, Chris Elias, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Tim Evans, formerly of the World Bank, George
Step
Gao
down.
from China CDC,
China CDC,
Averill Haines, former Deputy U.S. National Security Advisor,
former,
Jane Hulton, ANZ Bank, and former secretaries of both the Department of Health and Finance in Australia. Matthew Harrington from Edelman, Martin Knuckle from Lufthansa Group, Eduardo Martinez, UPS Foundation, Stephen Redd from US CDC, Adrian Thomas from Johnson & Johnson, and Hasti Taggi from NBC Universal Media, and Lavin
of course, they got a representative from NBC Media, and even a head CEO or head person from Johnson & Johnson Company.
Theroux from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Welcome. And before we begin the exercise, I also want to introduce Ryan Morhard, who's lead of the Global Health Security Group at the World Economic Forum, and he will say a few words. Ryan.
Thank you, Anita. And good morning and welcome again on behalf of the Center for Health Security, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the World Economic Forum. Welcome to Event 201. 201. Throughout our session today, I hope that number will represent two dimensions of our work to strengthen global health security. First, today, there are 200 epidemic events every year, and it hasn't always been this way. The number is increasing, driven by globalization, climate change, urbanization, deforestation, and other trends of our modern world. In other words, we're in a new era of epidemic risk. And the second dimension.
Notice the look on his face. Notice the demeanor. There's an urgency there. There's like an urgency there. If it's just an exercise, just a practice in this, okay, there's no threat at the time. Allegedly, there was no threat. And to us, there was no threat of a coronavirus being spread and by getting bit by a bat, and then end up subsequently spreading coronavirus. So a month before that bat thing happens, here in this video, you got a man that is clearly nervous. He's clearly, got an urgency about him to plug this 201 event and do an exercise that alludes to something bad coming upon the earth. Something is about to happen. Maybe it could be. So we have to plan for it. See? And it's a friendly exercise, right? Like she said, it's just not real. It's fictional, right? When fiction turns into reality a month later. And clearly, the look on their faces show that they know, that they're concerned. Their concern is, it's not just that something might happen and we don't know, could happen in the distant future somewhere. So we just want to prepare for something like, what happened with Ebola, and we just want to be ready. Their concern is a lot more narrow than that, a lot more short than something way down the road that could befall us one day. Their concern seems to be something more closer that they can smell and they can taste and they can feel that's right up on them. They know that they already released what's been released. They already know. And then again, like 30 days later or less, like about a month later, is exactly when the first guy got diagnosed.
Mention is that one of these days, one of these epidemic events will be a pandemic, a fast-moving pandemic. And the second dimension is that one of these days, one of these epidemic events will be a pandemic.
One of these days, one of these pandemic events will be a major one, an epic or major pandemic. Now keep in mind, this is a month before it actually happened. A month, okay?
A fast-moving pandemic.
Fast-moving
And mitigating risk and impact of that pandemic will require an all-hands-on-deck approach.
There you have it. What are they doing now? And this was supposed to be just hypothetical, right? This is a pre-plan. This is a pre-plan.
And we know from past responses that public-private cooperation will be essential. We also know from these responses that there are some bright spots when it comes to public-private cooperation, but some real critical challenges remain. But there's every reason for us to work together to address these challenges. For one, it turns out that at $570 billion annualized, the annualized risk posed by pandemics is on par and rivals with climate change, which means that the pandemic risk to lives and livelihoods is at a level that governments and the world's biggest businesses can no longer afford to ignore. And we are counting on this conversation today to inform our work together to improve our collective preparedness and to protect lives and livelihoods from pandemics. And to provide further context, I'm very pleased to introduce a short video now from Dr. Mike Ryan, the Executive Director at WHO and the head of WHO's emergency program. So with that, we'll turn to a video.
Greetings, distinguished guests, and thank you for this.
Like how for years now, the health symbol that they've been using is representing Satan, the Huston. That's the staff that Moses held up in the wilderness with the serpent, that represented the serpents that bit and poisoned the people, which represented sin. That serpent on that staff represented sin, about to die on the cross with Jesus Christ. I noticed for all these years, they've been using that symbol as the symbol of the devil, of the serpent, as their symbol, and they said it represents hell. Satan is the healer for them. See?
This opportunity to say a few words at this year's event 201, the high-level simulation exercise for pandemic preparedness and response, hosted by Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, the World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Unfortunately, I was not able to join you today. I'm involved in the IHR Emergency Committee for Ebola, but I had hoped to be in the room with you, because the issues you will be dealing with over the next hours may be tabletop exercises today, but they address real and critical threats which we at WHO take very seriously. Without a question, epidemic, but they address real and critical threats which we at WHO event 201, the high-level simulation exercise for pandemic preparedness and response, hosted by Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, the World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Unfortunately, I was not able to join you today. I'm involved in the IHR Emergency Committee for Ebola, but I had hoped to be in the room with you, because the issues you will be dealing with over the next hours may be tabletop exercises today, but they address real and critical threats which we at WHO take very seriously.
They may be just exercises today, but they address real and critical situations that may take place. So he's reading from a teleprompter. He's just saying what he's prompted to say. He's prompted to read. You can tell in his eyes going back and forth. He's reading a teleprompter, so it's scripted. Some people can memorize their script where they don't need a teleprompter, but other people need a teleprompter right in front of them to let them know their lines on what to say